In this video, I'm gonna go over the signs of trigonometric functions, but before that, we're gonna go over the basic introduction of trigonometric functions or ratios. Let's say we got an angle theta over here, which is x angle XOA, which is theta, and on the terminal side of the angle OA, we took a point P and we drew a perpendicular PM on OX. And this side here, OA, is called terminal side of this angle, and this side on the positive x-axis is called the initial side of the angle. And we're gonna, first of all, we're gonna write some trigonometric functions or trigonometric ratios, and then we're gonna see the signs of those trigonometric functions. So let's say this side OP is equal to R. So OM is X, PM is basically Y. So R is always going to stay positive. If you look at this right angle triangle, this is, we can use a Pythagorean theorem to find R, and R is always going to be positive. Even if we are in this quadrant, second quadrant, so this first quadrant here, and this side is second quadrant, and this is third quadrant, and this one is fourth quadrant over here. So the value of x and y will change as we move into different quadrants, but the value of R always stay positive. So x and y can be negative depending on where they are, but doesn't matter, R will be positive all the time, because R is R square is equal to x square plus y square. So we are squaring the x value and y value. Even x or y are negative according to different quadrant, R will be positive. Okay, so the basic functions like sine theta, so they defined it, sine theta is equal to y over r. So this y over this r. So r is basically up hypotenuse, and y is the opposite side to this angle. So opposite over hypotenuse gives you sine theta. And then we got cos theta, which is equal to x over r, and x side is our adjacent side, the side adjacent to this angle over here. Okay, so we got x over r is cos theta, and tangent theta is y over x. So opposite over adjacent, so y over x. Cosecant theta, some also write it CSC, is equal to r over y, which is basically reciprocal of sine theta. And secant theta is a reciprocal of cosine, so it's going to be r over x. And cotangent theta is going to be x over y, which is a reciprocal of the tangent theta. Okay, so in first quadrant here, the angle theta is less than pi over 2 and greater than 0. So the value of this angle, the max it can go up to here in first quadrant, because this is, so XOY, so this region is our first quadrant. So its value, it lies between 0 and pi over 2. Okay, in second quadrant, so this region over here, so it lies between, so theta is less than pi but greater than pi over 2. Okay, third quadrant, it's going to be greater than pi but less than 3 pi over 2. In fourth quadrant, it's going to be less than 2 pi but greater than 3 pi over 2. Okay, so those are some basic information or basic things you need to know. So now we're going to go over the signs of these trigonometric functions or these trigonometric ratios. So basically the sign of these trigonometric ratios depends on the quadrant in which the terminal side of the angle lies. You see, here the terminal side is in quadrant 1, and in this diagram the terminal side is in quadrant 2, and here in 3, and here in 4. So the sign depends on where the terminal side is. Okay, so and if you look into, let's say, sine theta, right? The sign of sine theta, r is always going to be positive. As I said, r is always going to be positive. So the sine theta value or the sign of sine theta depends on the sign of this y, and the sign of cosine theta, if it's positive or negative, depends on x, and tangent theta depends on y and x both. If y is negative, the sine theta is negative. If y is positive, sine theta is positive. Same thing here. If the sign of x, like if x is negative, then cosine theta is negative. If x is positive, the cosine theta is going to be positive. Okay, so now let's look into what happened when we are in the first quadrant. So look at this. In the first quadrant, the x value is positive and y value is positive, right? So we are above 0 and we are to the right of 0. So x is positive, y is positive. That tells me, so let me write down. So sine theta is y over r. That tells me sine theta is going to be positive because y is positive first quadrant. How about cosine theta? Cosine theta is x over r. So as x is greater than 0, you see x is positive, then cosine theta is also going to be greater than 0. It's going to be positive. The sign of cosine theta is going to be positive. And same thing for tangent. Y and x are positive, so it's going to be greater than 0. Cosecant theta also depends on y. In first quadrant, y is positive, so it's going to be 0. This is also going to be 0. This is also going to be greater than 0. So the sign of all the trigonometric functions in first quadrant is going to be positive. So I'm gonna say in first quadrant, all trig functions are going to be positive. Their value will be positive. Okay, now let's look into how about in second quadrant, right? What will happen in second quadrant? Let's look at that. So in second quadrant, we are here. So this is my second quadrant here. Okay, so terminal side is in second quadrant, and if you look, this is my y, this is my x. In second quadrant, my y is greater than 0. What x is on the left side here, left to the 0, so my x is less than 0. My x is negative. So in that case, sine theta, my y is a positive. If you look into that, if y is a positive, r is positive, that means sine theta is positive. So in second quadrant, my sine theta is going to be greater than 0, or its value is going to be positive, or the sign of this sine function in second quadrant is going to be positive. Okay, now let's look at cosine. So if you look at, x is negative and cosine is x over r. So let me go here. Cosine theta is x over r, but x is negative in second quadrant. You see here, so x is this value here and this is negative. So if x is negative, my cosine theta is going to be less than 0 and the value or the sign is going to be negative. Okay, let's go to third thing. Tangent theta. Tangent is y over x. Y is a positive, x is a negative in second quadrant. So tangent theta, which is y over x in second quadrant, as I say, y is greater than 0, x is less than 0. So this is also going to be less than 0, so negative. How about cosecant? Cosecant theta is r over y. So let's go back. So cosecant theta is r over y. So y is a positive in second quadrant. If y is a positive, r is always positive. So this is going to be greater than 0. The value is going to be positive. How about secant theta? It's going to be r over x, and x is a negative, so less than 0. It's going to be negative. And cotangent theta is going to be x over y, as x is negative, less than 0, so negative. So what we see here, only sine and its reciprocal, which is cosecant theta, are positive. So in second quadrant, sine and cosecant functions are positive and everything else is negative. See, cos is negative, tangent is negative, secant is negative, cotangent is negative. Okay, so let's go to third quadrant. So in third quadrant, if you look into that, so this is my x value and this is my y value, and if you see, we are on left of a 0, so x is less than 0. Okay, and y is also going to be less than 0. Y is a negative value, it's under 0, it's below 0, so it's less than 0. So what will happen in this case? Let's look into that. How about sine theta? Let me write down here. In third quadrant, x is less than 0 and y is also less than 0. And sine theta is y over r. If y is less than 0, that means sine theta is also less than 0. So it's negative. How about cosine theta? Cosine theta is x over r. X is less than 0, so the cosine theta is also going to be less than 0. The value is going to be negative. How about tangent theta? Tangent theta was y over x. So this is negative over negative, gives you positive value. So tangent theta is going to be greater than 0. So we got positive value. How about cosecant theta? R over y. So y is a negative, it's going to be less than 0. Then we got secant. Secant is r over x. Less than 0 is going to be negative. How about cotangent theta? Cotangent is reciprocal of tangent, so it's going to be x over y. As both are negative, gonna give us positive, so it's going to be positive. So in third quadrant, only tangent theta and its reciprocal, which is cotangent theta, are positive, and everything else, or the other trigonometric functions or trigonometric ratios, are negative. Okay, so this is our third quadrant over here. How about in fourth quadrant? Okay, in fourth quadrant, this is my third quadrant, sorry, this one here, third, and this is my fourth quadrant over here. X value, so terminal site is in fourth quadrant. My X value is positive, so write off 0, but Y value is negative. This angle is 90 degree. Okay, so X is going to be greater than 0 and Y is less than 0. Alright, so let's write down for fourth quadrant. So in fourth quadrant, X is greater than 0 and Y is less than 0. So what will be my sign? Sine theta was Y over R. As Y is negative, so this is going to be less than 0. So the sign of sine theta in fourth quadrant is negative. And cosine theta was X over R. X is positive, so going to be greater than 0. The value is going to be positive. How about tangent theta? Y over X. One of them is negative, so it's going to be less than 0. Negative value. Then we got cosecant theta is going to be R over Y. Y is negative, so less than 0. The function is going to be negative. Then I got secant theta R over X, which is greater than 0 because X is positive and R is always positive. So value is going to be positive. The last one we got is cotangent theta X over Y. As Y is a negative, it's going to be less than 0 and the function is going to be negative. Okay, so only cos theta and the reciprocal of cos is secant. These two are going to be positive in fourth quadrant. Alright, so those are the signs of trigonometric function, and there is a trick. There is a way to remember it. I learned that in my high school. So let me make 4 quadrants over here. It looks a little slanted, but it's okay. So this is my first quadrant, second quadrant, third quadrant, fourth quadrant. Okay, what you need to remember: after school to college. The first letter is A. I'm gonna write A over here. The first letter of second word is school. I'm gonna write S. T is a tangent. I'm gonna write T. And then the first letter of last word is C. I'm gonna write C over here. So that tells me in first quadrant all the trigonometric functions are positive. Okay. In second quadrant, sine and its reciprocal, which is cosecant, are positive and everything else is negative. In third quadrant, tangent and its reciprocal is cotangent, are positive, everything else is negative. And fourth quadrant, cosine and its reciprocal is secant, are positive and everything else is negative. That's how you can remember the signs of trigonometric function if you don't want to go to this lengthy detail or just want to solve some problem and you need to know what is the sign of trigonometric function in that quadrant. Okay, very easy to remember. Everybody need to go to college after school, after school to college. So all are positive. Sine and its reciprocal are positive. Tangent and its reciprocal are positive in third quadrant. cosine and its reciprocal are positive in fourth quadrant. I hope this will help you guys. And if you have any question, leave a comment, and please share with your friends and subscribe to the channel. That helps me a lot and motivate me to keep going and making more videos about math and physics. Thank you and have a good day. Bye bye. Take care.